One, two, three, let's switch this up.
Welcome to another episode of Sacred Sound Expressions. Today I have a treat for you, honey, because we are interviewing a death doula. Okay, please welcome my friend, my sister from another mister, Miss Lauren.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, babe.
Happy to be here.
Thanks. I am so excited. We all have a bunch of questions, me and my spirit friends.
We know each other.
Yeah. So I want to get straight into it because this is just juicy and exciting. So first things first, like death doula. Just for those that aren't aware of what that even is, can you just explain to us what you do?
I help people prepare and plan for their death, and I help them go through with those arrangements if they so choose it. The longer I do it, the more my role becomes one of education. So really, I'm an end-of-life educator. That's the primary thing I do.
Man, that's so exciting. Death isn't exciting. Being an end-of-life educator.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is a really big deal. So, okay, my next question, how in the world did you end up here? Like, how does I want to help people die. How did you do that?
I think by the time you hit your mid-30s, you've probably had a few death experiences that did not go to the optimal way that they could have. I had several of those. I saw some things that people should not see. Had we had conversations, those things would not have happened. But I also fell in love with green burial. That's my end game. The thing I want to do here is create a green cemetery that isn't just about where we put people at the end. It's about people coming to that space and being in that circle of life. And being a death doula was a way for me to get into the death industry that was really affordable and really flexible. And I had an in because I'd been laid off during the pandemic. I got a scholarship to a really great program, and here we are.
Listen, the universe will move things around.
If you're not part of a church and you want to set up a cemetery, you are required to have what's called a perpetual care fund. And that fund is to protect your cemetery, to protect that property if anything should happen to you, the proprietor. Here in Kentucky, it's based on the population of the county you live in. This is something that varies state to state and county to county, so it's not going to be the same everywhere. But I'm currently on the board of Wendy Knoll Memorial Sanctuary, which is being founded by the Lexington Unitarian Church. It's a property outside of Richmond that was donated by a member who buried her mother and partner on that property, and they want to continue doing it. We are able to bury Unitarians at this time because Unitarians are considered to be church property because it's a Unitarian-owned cemetery, so they're covered by other liabilities. But in order to bury anyone else, we've got to have $20,000. So that's our perpetual care fund and probably our first big hurdle as we start a cemetery.
That is, oh my gosh. Ugh, it gives me chills because it's like, I feel like death is this super like scary thing to talk about, understandably so. But I feel like an important part of your work is just normalizing the conversation around death. In other countries, yeah, it's not this taboo, unspoken thing. It's very much celebrated, in fact.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. It's a cultural thing for us. It's something we as a culture derived our death culture from wartime practices. So everything that's developed in our timeline as far as death goes as Americans is based on the Civil War. It's based on World War II. That's where these big changes occur, but it's not something that's evolved in terms of like a ritual or culture within the United States. We've brought that from other countries, but we don't have our own. And I think that's something that as we plan and as we kind of strive to be more authentic and what we're going to do at the end of life, it becomes more and more apparent that we don't have a hard like framework to work with as Americans. We're just kind of willy-nilly putting things together, and
Yeah.
I think we need to change that a little bit.
And that's wild because as a birth doula, it's the same thing. There is no postpartum ritual, ceremony, practice. Everybody kind of just does their own thing. But if you visit almost any other country on the entire planet, they have ceremonies and rituals from the moment you walk through the door. I watched a video of an Ethiopian mother. They had her jumping over fire back and forth like 3 times, and that was a way to like just cleanse the spirit. I don't want to speak on what it is because I don't know, but it just seemed as it was just this ritual that was really beautiful. The mother was dressed in this beautiful gown. She had on this beaded hat. Like it just felt so important. And I feel like here in America, when it comes to death rituals and birth rituals, it's just not seen as just ceremonial, you know?
It's very sterile. What we do is, kind of sad hospital room, maybe get some flowers, but it's not anything particularly engaging. But what you're saying too, and I'm kind of seeing in death culture, is that these are community events and you need those ceremonies. You need those things in place to gather the community. Without them, the community doesn't naturally gather, And so you find, I'm sure I felt that way when my son was born. Like I didn't have a lot of people with me, and that was really isolating. And I think people feel that way with death too. When people die, you don't automatically have that like, oh, we're all going to get up and go over there and take care of them and do these things. We just sort of like, you call me if you need anything. And I mean, that's not ill-intentioned. And I believe those are sincere words that people say, but to be grieving or postpartum and then need to put together a list of things that you need help with is a momentous task. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So people like you, honey, you're changing the game, bro. You're changing the game.
We're trying. And if I had it my way, we'd be filling these out. Like when you turn 18 in high school, you would just fill out your advanced care directive. You would be familiar with that document, and we can go from there.
Wow. Listen, we're getting there. We are taking steps every day. Yeah. So speaking of grief, what is some advice that you have how to handle grief? Like it's weird and it comes in waves and it's just icky.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time we try not to feel it. And my advice is to feel your feels. Cry. You've had a loss. It's a big deal. And maybe it doesn't feel significant, but it can bring up your other grief bubbles. And then you're going to drown in all these grief bubbles if you're not letting them out as they come. Make time for it. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to lay in bed and cry. It's okay to rest. There just has to come an end to it. And maybe it's a year. I'm not saying like you're definitely going to lay in bed for 2 or 3 days and then you're going to be fine, because that's not how grief works. Grief is something you carry. It's not something you can ever really release. It's something we learn to package and carry with us. But yeah, feel your feels. It's fine. It's okay. We all have them.
Yeah. I recently was writing just about feelings, and I realized that like sometimes you just have to set up a space and just let yourself fall apart. Like fall all the way, break into a million pieces. And it can be so scary to let yourself do that, because we have this conditioning of like, if I let myself break, I'm never gonna be whole again. But it is the exact opposite of what will happen if you let yourself fall apart in most cases. I know everyone is different. We've all had different experiences, but just letting yourself fall, I think it's therapeutic.
Giving yourself space. Like that's just really important. Like lay on the couch and eat pizza and binge watch a bunch of stuff, and you don't need to feel bad about it, or as long as everyone is clean, safe, and dry, we're good. That's always your baseline. So that's where the worry needs to start.
Yeah. And it's this capitalistic program of like, go. I have to be productive all the time. No, like, and that's why having a grief ritual or grief ceremony is so important because it literally creates that space for you to do that.
Right. Well, and that expectation that you're going to do it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Wow. So like, how do you deal? Like because I'm sure this affects other areas in your life because you're not just a death doula, you're a wifey, you're a mommy. Like how do you deal?
With my grief, or like when we have a
Um,
loss, or
yeah, when you're counseling someone through a loss and helping someone transition to the other side, how do you, because I'm sure there's someone watching this right now who's like, yes, I feel called to become a death doula. So what is some advice you could give as far as just not absorbing the emotions of the family and just protecting your own energy?
right. You know, I always sort of, when I go into a care situation, I picture myself kind of taking Lauren off, and I am there as a servant. It's not
Ooh,
about me.
come on. Ooh.
I am the coordinator. I am the party planner. I am there as sort of a neutral being who gets shit done, you know? Like that's my job, is to keep things going, to keep people moving, to make sure we're getting what we can out of this situation. My job isn't to talk about me. My job isn't to bring my grief into the situation. It has nothing to do with me. If I'm asked, I'll talk about it, but I have to be asked directly to ever even bring up my personal stuff, because that's not what we're doing.
All
You know?
right. That is a profound piece of
It's a
advice.
separation. Yeah.
Yes, because I can even see that like in just my daily life of like when I could be using that. Like, for example, my two 7-year-old nieces got into a fight. And in that moment, I was I separated. Like I completely separated and I became a mediator. I became a counselor. I became someone who used to be 7 and understands what it feels like to have a big emotion and not know how to articulate what's happening, not know how to process. But me and as the individual and the auntie who cares, I had to remove her in order to not get emotionally attached and upset about what was happening. Yeah, wow.
And it
Yes,
actually is
Lauren.
like kind of a similar parenting role where you're like, I'm in charge right now. I'm the
Yeah,
adult here. You're all falling apart. It's just everybody be cool. You know, it's
yeah.
kind of your that you take on.
Wow, that's so cool, man. I'm in awe of what you do. My God.
It's good stuff.
Jesus.
I mean, it doesn't, it can feel heavy. There are days that it feels heavy, but I feel like my presence really changes the dynamic a lot of the time, and that can be a really rewarding experience. You know, it's not all sad and heavy. You're like, man, this was metal. This was cool. Like we did something that everybody should aspire to do. And
Right.
yeah, it's really beautiful, really wonderful, really obtainable, not financially tied things that can make these huge
Ooh,
differences.
that's a question I have. Just like financially, like how do you even begin to figure out what to charge for that kind of service?
I offer a lot of different things, and I charge pretty low on that scale. I I value myself, my time at about $60 an hour, and then I add whatever supplies we use in there. But I try to be as affordable and approachable as I can.
Yeah.
And if I can't do it personally, I try and find a way for people to have some sort of support. Because
Yeah.
even a lot of what this is people don't even want to Google death. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're not even willing to even dip a toe in. So it's nice to be able to just be like, okay, you don't want to do this full thing, but here is something else that you can go to and hand out resources that aren't financially tied. But even with green burial, it's dramatically lower cost to naturally return to the earth than when we start adding in a steel casket, a vault, concrete liner, a team of machines that's going to come dig the grave. Like we're going into, I mean, around here, $5,000 to $6,000 just for your grave. We go to a natural grave and they're about $2,000. You know, it's a big difference. It's a big divide.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about green burial and natural returning and what that is and what that could look like?
Yeah. So when we say natural or green burial, and this is something like, don't Google it, just listen. Because funeral homes have come in and they're like, we're doing green burial, but they're not. They just want those words because people are starting to want those services.
Yeah.
So a true natural burial is done at 3.5 feet. That's where our mother mycelial level is. So all of our friendly mushroom friends, all of our little microbe friends, they live at 3.5 feet in the soil. That's like the super sweet spot for them. When we bury a body, we dig the grave at about 4 feet. So the body is halfway within that layer to optimize use of that layer. That's also the last layer in the soil layers that can access oxygen. So oxygen plays a huge part in decomposition. So at 3.5 feet, we still have oxygen exchange. We have all our creepy crawly friends. We're optimizing how quickly our bodies can go back into the earth. We only use a natural container, something that's biodegradable. It might be a cotton shroud, it might be silk, it might be a wood coffin. I'm team cardboard. If I ever actually have my cemetery, I want to include those cardboard coffins in that cost. I think it's amazing when families and friends come to decorate those together and do like a really nice last send off. It's something else that you can be authentic to that person. Whereas like, I don't know that a wood box says much about who I am, but a cardboard box covered in things that my family has added probably does. But anyway, we have our biodegradable container. We submerge that into the earth. It's covered with soil. The sod is kept to the side and added back on top so we can get that grass layer back in as quickly as possible. And yeah, with right moisture conditions, a body can be completely dissolved in as little as 6 weeks. So it's very different from a conventional burial where, we're at 6 feet, there's no oxygen exchange. So decomposition is incredibly slow. We have a steel vault. The only purpose of that vault is to make it easier to mow the grass. So the vault keeps the mound of the grave up instead of letting it repose into like a little curvature, which I've never actually seen that happen. I think all of that might be lies.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So we have a vault, we have a concrete liner, we have a steel casket. Those are usually airtight. Within that casket, we have an embalmed body. Within natural burial, we don't embalm unless we're using chemicals that can go back into the earth. And there are natural things that can prolong our state of visibility without decomp. But it's another up and coming industry. I think in 10 years, we probably will default to those. But right now we use very toxic things to keep bodies embalmed. So you've completely turned off anything that would decompose. What happens in those capsules is they typically fill with water. So that's, kind of everyone's fate is you're just going to be in an underground water grave. And we don't decompose. I mean, I've seen bodies pulled from 70s that very little decomposition.
What the? That is crazy.
Tons of concrete, tons of steel, toxic chemicals going back into the earth. And then you're just like in this weird stasis. Like your body can never return. Whereas with natural burial, we're not particularly nutritious. Like we don't really add a lot to the nutrients of the soil. But what we do have is really good biome. We add all sorts of great creepy crawlies. So what you ultimately get to do is be a probiotic capsule and you get to help heal the earth, and that's your last gesture. And I think that's really, really beautiful, especially in comparison to the alternative.
When you compare to how much over a lifespan, how much you've taken from the earth, it almost feels like the least you could do is become a vitamin. Yeah. Okay. I have to pause and go backwards to.
Yeah, that was a lot of information. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You blew my mind because I want to there has to be a significant spiritual impact of not decomposing for like 100 years or however long it does take. So it does break down eventually, right? Like in a
Yeah,
casket?
it kind of depends on what other environmental factors are present. Moisture is always a really big deal, but without oxygen, you just don't have a lot of things that want to decompose. Well, and steel doesn't decompose. Concrete
Right.
doesn't decompose. Like it's just in the ground.
Because like
Well,
when
and
you
with
think
that
of the
material
movies,
too, like, go ahead.
huh? I was just
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
when you think of the movies, like they're always digging up the bodies and it's bones. So apparently that's not real.
I mean, bones will decompose under the correct conditions. This idea that we're all going to be bones isn't accurate.
Yeah.
Like, finding fossils is a big deal. Just imagine if our bones didn't decompose, how many bones there would be in the earth. Like
Right.
your bones should decompose. And I think for optimal green burial, for me at least, that means reusing those same spaces. This concept that like my body goes into one grave is very American. Most places do not have the land space to have that attitude towards it. And usually like you rent the grave. Across Europe, you get your grave for between 12 and 25 years. At that point, you're dug up, you're put into a mass grave, and somebody else takes that space. But here, with green burial specifically, the idea is, after 10, 20 years, there's nothing left. There's your soil. There's
Right.
no other reason not to put and reuse that space and continue to put bodies in after, a certain amount of time. And I think that's also just like so equalizing. And so like, we're all going to be dirt. And when we're dirt, we're just going to use the same dirt. That's fine.
Yeah.
I really like that aspect of it. Some people don't, but for me, I think it's really cool just to be like, and we've all been swallowed back into the earth, and off we go to other molecules.
And I think because I can see an issue someone would pose is, okay, well, without my own singular space, I don't have this headstone and my family members aren't going to have a place to come visit me. And I think a really awesome alternative to that would be an ancestor altar in the home.
Right.
Where you can have that. But I think, people consider that more like especially more religious things, that's more like witchcrafty, borderline. But
it wasn't. When you go back 100 years or so, that was very commonplace. It's just we've lost our rituals.
Yeah, fuck, man, we got to get back there.
They're important, and they're at least kind of fun to do. So.
Yeah, I remember she did an offerenda at a local cemetery here in Kentucky, and it was so cool. It was a tree. You have pictures, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna put a picture on the screen for everyone to see. It was this tree, and it had these hanging lights and jars. It was the coolest shit ever, and I want one of those in my backyard. Like, just
really well. I'm gonna take that credit. It was better than I ever thought it would be. But it was also all recycled. It was, very low cost, low energy. Well, not low energy. Hanging them all on the tree was pretty high energy. But it came out so beautifully, and I was just really pleased with it, and really pleased that that was something I could do with our community and share with people.
I feel like America's so different.
Yeah. We've got that Puritan culture to start off with. That's a rough place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of white dudes
that made all the freaking decisions, and we never decided that maybe, hey, someone making decisions, what was it, 600 years ago? Something like that. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492.
Okay, we're Columbusing. Okay,
but anyways, I just feel like, wait, so who made the Constitution? When was that?
1776.
Oh, you're so good. I would have never remembered that, but as soon as you said it, because I think it's on the quarter or something, on one of the ones. So it's like a bunch of white dudes sat in a room and decided what was best for America. And here we are, hundreds of years later, and no one was like, maybe we should revisit this. Maybe they weren't right.
We're very unique in that. I don't know if it's still true, but for the longest time, we had the longest standing constitution, meaning at some point, almost everywhere else was like, several hundred years have gone by. Things are different. Maybe we make a new document. But it does seem very American to me to be like, no, we're not going to do
Right.
it.
No, we were right. We're right.
We're good. No.
Jesus. Well, I think that is about all for our discussion this afternoon.
Okay.
Freaking thank you, bro. Like, this was so good. Next time I'm not gonna have my curtains open because I keep looking at the FedEx people, my sister, the kids. Like, feel like I've been doing this the whole time. But thank you for doing this. And you gave such good information, so many gems. Like, this was incredible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So how can people find you?
I have a website. It's bgdeathdoula.com. And yeah, I encourage people to email me. If you have a weird question, email me. If I don't know the answer, I'll send you to somebody who does. I might not know, but I know my web. I can get you where you want to go. Right. Totally okay to email me, to talk. That's encouraged. Having too many deaths is a great problem to have.
Yeah. That thank you for the work that you do. I cannot say thank you enough. It's just so like astounding, like to do this, because I even feel like until I faced my own fear of death, it was just so scary to even talk about or to think about, like, let alone talk about it. So to have a career centered around transitioning to an unknown place, like, I'm completely in awe of you. I love you so much. Do you have any social medias for Bluegrass Death Doula?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm old, so I don't TikTok or anything. But BG Death Doula. And yeah, if you Google Kentucky Death Doula, I'm the one you find. So
yeah. All right. Thank you, my beautiful sister.
Thank you.
Come back next week for another episode of Secret Sound Expressions.